All right, before we get too deep in the weeds on this new DOD directive, I just want to say good morning to my FBI agent. Thank you for tuning in. It's so nice to see you again. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person one day. I'm sure we're going to meet on a knock and talk one day. Just make sure that when you come for that knock and talk to do it right. I teach investigative procedures to you guys and others. And just make sure you have it together because I'm sure you're going to make a great YouTube video one day. All right. You guys have been hammering me about this DOD directive and wanting my opinion about what it means. Is it something we need to be worried about? And just my opinion. Normally, we talk about church security on this channel. And to be honest, there's been a lot of government overreach lately, and that does affect church security immensely. So I'll dive into it. I'm game. Let's talk about it. I took a look at it this morning, went through it all, and what I realized, I'm wearing the wrong shirt. Hang on a second. Let me get the right shirt on. All right. Much better. If you want this shirt, head on over to christianwarriortraining.com, head over to the merch tab, and you can get this same shirt at a reasonable price. All of that money goes to support what we're doing here at Christian Warrior Training. I can see the FBI agent's report now. Mr. Graves showed up online wearing a t-shirt that said, "Trust God, not government." It's going to be hilarious. All right, let's dive deep into the weeds. First off, we're going to talk about this DOD directive that has got the internet by storm. When you look at this DOD directive, I don't know which one of you guys found this, but kudos to you, man. Here's all the DOD issuances, and we got to go all the way through them to find the one that you guys are all worried about. And we'll talk about if you do need to be worried about that or not. We're going to get, oh, there it is. DOD 5240.01, DOD intelligence and intelligence-related activities and defense intelligence component assistance to law enforcement agencies and other civil authorities. I can tell you right now, as a 30-year cop working in the San Francisco Bay Area, seeing defense intelligence and local law enforcement in the same title raises the hair on the back of my neck. I don't have any on my head, but I do have it on my neck. All right. So let's go ahead and let's go over to this really quick. Let's talk about what this is to begin with. All right. So what is DOD Directive 5240.01? Now, look, it is a policy directive outlining how the Department of Defense conducts intelligence activities and provides support to law enforcement. All right, my personal opinion, we're going to dive deep into whether that should even be a thing, okay? But let's talk about it. So the purpose is to guide intelligence-related operations and support to civilian authorities while maintaining legal constraints. So I saw a lot of YouTubers out there, a lot of them, you guys watch the same channels I do. I can look at the stats and see what channels you guys watch compared to like my channel. And it's all the same ones. And a lot of them are putting out content with titles that say, "Did the military just authorize deadly force on civilians in the United States?" What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through this order with me, and we're going to look for ourselves. All right. So what are these DOD directives? What are DOD directives specifically? They're internal documents that set policy for military operations and procedures, ensuring that actions align with the law. Now, they have the authority within the military, but are subject to legal boundaries like the Posse Comitatus Act. We're going to talk more about the Posse Comitatus Act because the first thing I thought when I read the title this morning, when I had my cup of coffee and I was reading this, the first thing I thought was, I think this violates the Posse Comitatus Act. And I read through all of this and then read Posse Comitatus Act again, because we are all taught the Posse Comitatus Act in the police academy, and I have taught it to others for decades. I wanted to go back and read it because I'm like, maybe they've changed something. They haven't changed anything. All right, so let's talk about this in particular. Why should we be concerned? Well, when you go through the table of contents, this is a typical government memo. You got your general issuance information, responsibilities, who's responsible for what. But we need to go down to 3.3A, levels of authority. That was the one I went to first because I want to read exactly what they're looking at here. So when you go to levels of authority, keep going down to section 2, drop down to section C. This is the part that freaks me out. Assistance in responding with assets with potential for lethality or any situation in which it is reasonably foreseeable that providing the requested assistance may involve the use of force that is likely to result in lethal force, including death or serious bodily injury. It also includes all support to civilian law enforcement officials in situations where a confrontation between civilian law enforcement and civilian individuals or groups is reasonably anticipated. Such use of force must be in accordance with DOD 5210.56, which you can look at that on your own. Potentially is further restricted based on the specifics of the requested support. So here what they're doing is they're outlining intelligence support for law enforcement. They should not be doing that. Okay. I think it's a clear violation of Posse Comitatus Act. When we teach our recruits in the academy about Posse Comitatus, we tell them all active duty troops are to be left alone. So as an example, I've used Posse Comitatus as a patrol officer twice in my career. Once, a group of officers were chasing a stolen car. The suspect foot bailed. They all ran on foot up this rural hillside with about 10 cops chasing them. And I went up to a nearby rancher and said, "Hey, do you have a quad?" And he says, "I do. Do you want it?" "Yes, I would love to use it to go chase that felon." And so he gave me his quad and I passed all the officers and then we took the suspect into custody. That's Posse Comitatus. It is me going to a civilian and just saying, "Hey, I need your help." I used it another time in another foot chase where I was chasing a guy. Actually, I used it 3 times where a citizen, as we were running by, the suspect was so far ahead at a stop sign was a car. I'm like, "Hey, give me a ride, catch up to that guy." And he gave me a ride, floored it, and I jumped out of the car, took him into custody. And a third time, I on viewed a violent crime. I had 2 people at gunpoint. One was not cooperative, and you could hear the other cops coming to help me. And a truck driver pulls up and goes, "Officer, would you like help?" "Yes, I would like your help. Come down. If that guy gets up, start beating the crap out of him." And he's like, "Yeah," and he jumps into it. That's Posse Comitatus. If it was an active duty troop, they rolled up and said, "Officer, do you need help?" I would say no, because I'm not allowed to use them. It's specifically by code, we can't use them. Now, National Guard, different subject. I've worked with National Guard on counter drug operations, but they're on state active duty orders. They are employed by the state. They are in the National Guard. They are not active duty. It's a different title. To use the military for intelligence in civilian law enforcement, I think really breaks that Posse Comitatus Act. So let's look at the Posse Comitatus Act. Here it's 18 United States Code 1385. Here it says, "Whoever, except in cases under circumstances expressly authorized by the Constitution or act of Congress, willfully uses any part of the Army, the Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, or the Space Force as Posse Comitatus or otherwise to execute the laws, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned for not more than 2 years or both." So when you look at this, using them for intelligence, and we'll go into why this is later, but I personally feel like cops are taught from the get-go, active duty troops are off limits. National Guard, totally cool. In fact, many riots in California, we've called out the National Guard and we have them do extra duties for us, like not so much crowd control, but more like blocking intersections and guarding infrastructure and stuff like that. So let's go back to this part that concerns everybody. It doesn't tell. A lot of YouTubers are out there saying it authorizes the government to come out, and they're making it sound like the military is going to come out and just start slaughtering people right now. No, they're opening up the door for them to violate the Posse Comitatus Act, which they're laying the groundwork for that, and that is absolutely wrong. There's a lot of broad definitions in this thing right here. And this is legally binding for anybody in the military. Anybody in the military has to abide by this directive. Okay. So the document's language on assisting law enforcement and providing intelligence leaves room for interpretation, which could lead to military overreach in civilian law enforcement activities. That bothers me a lot. And then there's intelligence sharing risks. This all started because they wanted to share intelligence and to use military intelligence. Intelligence support to law enforcement is going to blur the lines between military and civilian operations, and it's going to raise privacy and civil liberties concerns. This freaks me out a little bit. So this whole thing that we're looking at right here, this is the one paragraph that concerns us. Actually, the whole thing concerns me. That use of force is what everybody's freaking out about. You should be freaked out about this whole directive that's directing our military intelligence apparatus to help law enforcement. There are going to be law enforcement agencies like the FBI, ATF, and other groups that are going to use this military intelligence for wrong. You're not going to see your local cops working with the military on intelligence issues. This is straight up set up for federal law enforcement agencies to use, and you should be concerned about it. You should be calling your congressman and your senator right now. So the other thing besides lethal force that's in here is now we're going to have military intelligence apparatus at the disposal of the FBI. Does that make you feel good? It doesn't make me feel good. Trust God, not government. Okay. Now look, this is not the place, a DOD directive is not the place that you do these changes to the Posse Comitatus Act. Major changes on how the military interacts with law enforcement should not come through internal DOD directives. It has to come from Congress. We see this with the ATF all the time and the EPA, where they make their own laws and make people subject to laws that never had congressional oversight. I want to ask our congressional leaders, what are you doing right now to stop the military from using their intelligence apparatus in civilian law enforcement? Now, this directive is legally binding for military members, and it raises huge concerns about military overreach and civil liberties. 100%, there needs to be congressional oversight on this particular subject. This should not be happening. When you guys flooded my inbox yesterday with read this DOD Directive 5240.01, I was like, come on, man, it's going to be another conspiracy. I am not a conspiracy theory guy. I don't like conspiracy theories. I think they're dumb. I believe the earth is round. That's about it. And when I saw it coming in, I'm like, it's going to be another Twitter thing that just got people all riled up. And I was going to ignore this and not do it. But when I read it this morning, I'm now on my third cup of coffee. Thank you very much, government. And I am realizing how screwed up this is. It's got a bunch of legalese that should make all of us uncomfortable. Why are they doing this? That's the big question. Why did the government put this out? There's two reasons on what's going on in the United States right now that they would do this. Number one, because all the terrorists that they have led into the United States. That would be one reason, because these guys we are going to have an event worse than 9/11, and along the lines of something that happened on October 7th with Israel. That is what's going to happen here. So part of me is like, well, maybe they're doing it for that. But trust God, not government. I really don't trust my government lately. I have seen them do very illegal things as an officer. The other reason is for all the election stuff coming up for January 6th, for January 20th, for election day, and everything in between. My bet, that's what it's for. But we won't know until Congress starts hammering people and starts asking why. So I'm asking Congress, what are you doing? So what are you going to do as an individual? Okay, well, number one, contact your electors. What are you going to do besides that? What are you going to do to prepare? Well, you should realize that January 6th, or election day, I think it's November 5th, January 6th and January 20th are all big days. And you should honestly lay low. And if everybody's like, come to the Capitol on January 6th. I got invited to the Capitol on January 6th and I did not go. I thought about it. I thought, man, that would be part of history to see Trump speak there and, to kind of be there for all that and see it. But I thought, no, this looks like a ginormous red flag. I'm going to stay home. And I'm glad I did. I would be very wary about some of the stuff that you see going on out there, some of the information that's coming out, and verify yourself. You should not take my word for any of this. You should head on over and go to the DOD directives, go look at things that look interesting to you. Go ahead and click the one that's important, 5240.01. Read this whole document. How many pages? 22 pages. A lot of it's just BS you can skim over. Go read this whole thing. And then when it tells you to go back and, it says Posse Comitatus Act, go back and look at that. When it talks about the Economic Act, go back and look at that. When it tells you all this stuff, go back and reread it and then make your own decision about it. I think bad times are upon us, man. I've been saying this on our Survival Dispatch and some of the other podcasts I show up on. I think you need to be prepared for that. And the Bible tells us that, right? And here's the other thing. Don't get so freaked out about this, especially for the Christians that are watching this. Don't get so freaked out about this, okay? We know biblically what's going to happen, and we're seeing it happen in real life. I'm okay with that. I'm not so freaked out about this because I know where I'm going. I've read the book, and I know who wins in the end. It's God. So we know our Lord and Savior is coming back We know that horrible things are going to happen in the meantime. We're just seeing them and they're a little bit scary. Don't freak out. Just contact your representatives and let them have it. And then there's two things I want you to do when you leave here. Pray unceasingly all the time. Pray all the time. Lay your problems at God's feet and he will help you. If you haven't been baptized, now is the time to get baptized. Make a comment in the comment section. I'd love to hear. I see every once in a while some people saying it's time that I get baptized. Awesome. I would love, if you're in the Idaho area, come to my church. I'd love to baptize you. I think that would be awesome. Just let me know. So pray unceasingly. And then second, after that, is to remember your ABCs, always be caring.